The Bulls are about to be let loose in Barcelona. 4 races, 3 wins, 93 points. Can anyone stop Sebastian Vettel's Red Bull?
And the checkered flag was Sebastian Vettel's once more. Thank you very much for pressing the red button. I dare say many of you have done this because you saw the news at the end of our BBC One programme that there is a current investigation into Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, Mark Webber and Jaime Alguersuari for speeding under yellow flag conditions. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but we would love your tweets, we'd love your emails. You can email us f1@bbc.co.uk or you can send your tweets to @JakeHumphreyF1. Any questions, any thoughts for the guys? And I'll try my best on Twitter to let you know the guests that will be coming up and joining us, and you can send in your questions for them as well. But let's just get a quick recap from David and Eddie about that one. Very quick on BBC One there, David, so we didn't have time to discuss your experience in the commentary box today. Slightly less frantic than Turkey, but still something happening on almost every lap in that one.
Well, there was. We had a number of battles going on. Obviously, Nick Heidfeld starting at the very back, having not actually competed in qualifying, showed that having 6 new sets of tyres, didn't need to use them all, but having those new tyres was enough to enable him to come right through and end up in front of his teammate who started 6th on the grid. Yeah. So, you know, that tyre issue is something that's going to, I'm sure, be debated amongst the fans and the teams in future races. We had the biggest gap between the option and prime tyres than we've seen at previous races. It was more than 2 seconds in qualifying. And then obviously up front, intriguing battle between McLaren and Red Bull. Ferrari obviously got to the front early doors with Alonso making a fantastic start, but we knew he didn't really have the race pace to be there. He was backing everyone up, but the big surprise was that once Sebastian Vettel was out front, he wasn't able to capitalise on that. And it really looked like Lewis Hamilton had the quicker package here today.
Well, you know, they had a row in the commentary box between us to understanding which was the better car. At the end of the day, when you now know of all the things that we'll say the Red Bull didn't have, you'd have to say the car is probably the quickest car. But what is really surprising to me, we are now, what, a third of the way through the season, and they still can't get the cars right. Is it very complicated on this car? What's going on? If it was me and it was so complicated, I'd take it off. Take the benefit of all of that weight and the batteries and race without it. Certainly in Monaco, it's worth thinking about.
Well, the thing is, without it, you still have to run the car at 640. The weight was increased this year to 640 as a minimum weight to accommodate all the teams to be able to run it. So there's no weight advantage, but there is definitely a reliability advantage.
At the start, though, you're really hamstrung.
Not in Monaco. I think Eddie might be onto something here, because in Monaco, it's the shortest run from the start-finish to the first corner. I think anywhere else, I wouldn't agree with them, but certainly looking 1 week ahead, then if they do think they have issues, then maybe they will consider that.
There is no gain from taking it off. The only thing you remove is any doubt over whether or not it's working. So surely you leave it on and hope it's working. Isn't that the best solution?
I disagree with you. I think taking it off is an advantage, like somewhere like Monaco, because you have the distribution of the weight. Yeah. It's where you put the weight. You can get rid of understeer, you can do oversteer, you can move it around. The biggest advantage of taking it off in a place like Monaco, it's uncomplicated, it's uncluttered, and you can put the weight, which is the lead pieces, in the place that you get the maximum advantage from, and you need the car to turn in a place like Monaco.
I think some of the teams spend a bit more money now on ballast. They don't use lead anymore, EJ. I think they use tungsten and other very dense materials.
Just shows you how things have moved on.
And you're not allowed to use lead weight when you go fishing anymore either, just in case you're going out in the summer.
I wasn't thinking about fishing at this moment in time.
I bet he wasn't. So what do you think then? Do Red Bull stick with KERS? Do they try and make it work? Do they take it off completely, forget about it for this season? Here's another question for you. Do they even need to worry about it? The car is so fast in qualifying. As long as they get off the line well, do they then need it during the race? We just saw Lewis Hamilton fighting and fighting Sebastian Vettel, unable to get past him, and we know that Vettel was struggling with his KERS. So get in touch, tweet us and email us. I'll have a look, actually, see whether any have come in already. And while we do that, let's talk about how special and how important this next couple of weeks is for the season, because we now have to be in Monaco, and we will be post-race in Monaco in 7 days. It flies around, doesn't it?
Look, it's a merry-go-round, except it is absolutely electric. You get on the coach, so to speak, on your way to Australia, wherever it was this year, and it just never stops, because every few moments there's new news, breaking news, a race, it's just frantic, and 20 races this year, it's just probably too much for me. Then Not as young as I was, David.
Eddie, you can sleep between now and the next race. Let's just go through a few tweets. Eddie Parks says, what's to stop the teams from not coming out for Quali 3, just saving all the tyres for the race? There should be some points now for Quali. D-Day Lewis also says, it seems that having more soft tyres available to the drivers is more important than your grid position in qualifying. And the Badger 1968, Schumacher will win next week's Monaco Grand Prix. You heard it here first. It sounds good. Well, it's an interesting talking point. Let's take two drivers as an example. Michael Schumacher ran no soft tyres in the final part of qualifying, went forwards in the race. Nick Heidfeld ran absolutely no tyres during qualifying, had all his soft tyres, went a long way forwards during the race. So we don't want to ruin the spectacle of qualifying or give anybody an idea for something cheeky, but it's worth thinking about how we deal with this.
Well, it's worth thinking about it. However, look, let's bear one thing in mind. We virtually had Paul from Pirelli here on Sky. I think they made a mistake. They didn't quite understand they did understand, but the qualifying, the cars have got much quicker, and as a result, what they prepared and brought here for the race tyre was what was good enough a couple of months ago. However, the pace of investment and pace of advancing cars and the speed, they probably brought the wrong tyre here. The gap was too big. Bring the gap closer, you can eradicate all that problem.
OK, and finally, a very quick one before we get any news from Ted, who I'm sure is down sniffing around near the steward somewhere. Why do investigations always happen after the race in Formula One? With so much technology, says Funky Phil, why can't the stewards see that someone hasn't slowed down under yellows and immediately either call them in for a stop-go or a drive-through, or punish them during the race so we're not left in this limbo situation?
Well, I think for the main reason that the telemetry that they'll rely on to know did the driver actually have a lift in the sector where the flags were is on board the car. Now that information, you need to have the chance for the team to download it and then bring it to the FIA stewards and show and present their case. Now if the driver didn't lift at all and he was quicker, then obviously he's going to get a penalty. But the thing we've got to remember is someone might have just made their pit stop. They may have been on the hard tyre going 5 seconds a lap slower.
Suddenly they're on the
They've put the soft tyre on, gone out into a yellow flag zone. Even with a huge lift, a safety lift, there's still a second quicker in that sector, that zone. So that's the reason. It's never as simple as it appears. You know, the stewards, the last thing they want is not to have an actual finish to this Grand Prix when the checkered flag drops. But sometimes it's just necessary. It's a very technical sport. OK, and rest assured that all that technology will be used by the stewards to work out exactly what went on. And as soon as there is any news, we'll bring it to you right here on the F1 Forum. Great to get your tweets. We'll hopefully grab a few drivers live, see what they're feeling very shortly. Some more of your messages. Lots to talk about, lots of people to hear from. But first, let's relive all the excitement of this afternoon's Grand Prix.
Look but never stare. They get away perfectly off the front row. No stallers on the grid. It looks pretty even. And Vettel tries to duck in behind Webber. And look at Alonso. Alonso's up the inside. He takes the lead for Ferrari. Will Vettel try to go around the outside? No chance. So McLaren back in the field a little bit. Fernando Alonso leads the race in front of his adoring fans. What a sensational start.
Vettel heading for the pits. Definitely forced off very early, but he's obviously just losing too much time behind the Ferrari, and he wants to get some clean air.
But what will Ferrari do now? It looks like he's got some clear track. And Alonso does pit. Hamilton will take over the lead of the Grand Prix. So they're pitting Webber too, we're hearing. Vettel's been very fast in the middle sector of the lap. Will that be enough to clear him in front of Fernando Alonso? This is going to be so close, coming down. And look, Vettel comes out of the slipstream of Glock, I think it is, and he's got it. It's worked beautifully.
Button making a move on Mark Webber. He's down the outside into turn one. Can he make it stick?
Oh, they're going to touch.
There must have been contact there, but what a great move from Jenson Button. And Mark Webber's afternoon, he started on pole. He's now worked his way back to 5th place.
Here we go. Look at that. Picked up the slipstream, he's got the DRS letterbox open on the rear wing. Webber makes his one allowed move, and Jenson sails down the outside. And I really expected Jenson to be gyrating at that point as left front touches right rear. Mark Webber managed to avoid it happening, and look at that, straight past Alonso as well. So Jenson on fire on this lap.
Yeah, that's Kovalainen, well embedded there.
So suspension failure, driver error, brake fade. What do you think that was? First and second, McLaren chases Red Bull. Third and fourth, Red Bull chases McLaren. And that is Massa off the track again, and that is at the turn 6 and 7 chicane, and he looks very much like he's calling it a day. The reigning world champion, the leader of the championship, did not buckle under pressure, has got it to the front and wins the 2011 Spanish Grand Prix just by 0.6 of a second from a hard-charging and sensational drive from Lewis Hamilton. 13 wins for Sebastian Vettel. Surely that was one of his hardest.
Fantastic, Seb. Great drive. Well done. Brilliant job. Brilliant job.
Ring ding 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 ding.
That's terrible.
I'm still not sure about that, you know.
Terrible, terrible, terrible.
I have
terrible.
actually heard the full, the full length version of his Crazy Frog, and it was a little bit better than that shortened version. But in fairness, he has just done 66 laps.
I am quite tall, but it's an easy mistake to make, I'm sure.
Yeah,
if it was Eddie, I wouldn't mind that he couldn't see where he was
Motor
going.
racing is dangerous. It says it on the
my
ticket.
height again. I mean, I'm honestly getting the message here. You two beanstalks.
Look, it doesn't matter how tall you are, you can still be
I
knocked
think he
over
should
by a
have run
chunk
you
of
down.
tyres. That'll be on the internet before long. Let's talk about celebrations when you cross the line. What was your sort of regulation celebration in the car? What did you used to do?
I used to ask for confirmation. I hadn't just dreamt I'd seen the checkered flag. I never had the confidence that those guys had. Can you confirm that was the checkered flag, please?
You're like, how
I
many
would
laps
lift
to go?
for half a lap.
Eddie?
I used to pinch myself. I said, am I sure I'm awake? And is this reality? Because it didn't happen very often, but you just wanted to be very sure to treasure every moment.
Yeah.
It's just an electric feeling, and you wanted to pinch yourself to make sure that you were alive and well.
Amazing. Well, it's a feeling that Paul di Resta would love to feel at some point during his Formula One career. Another strongish drive from him. The car isn't performing as the team would have liked. They brought a raft of updates here this weekend. They decided to take them off the car in the end because they weren't improving things. Let's hear from Paul now.
Well, Paul, 12th today, and you seem to make a good start. Just tell us about your race.
I think it was pretty straightforward. I think conserving the tyres yesterday definitely helped our situation today. Just a bit unfortunate, we got stuck behind the Toro Rossos quite a few times in the first, second and third stints, or else I think we would have been a bit further up, but our race pace was definitely far better than qualifying. We need to try and improve that for the next race, but I think the guys did a great job with the strategy. The pit stop seemed to run well, and that was the best we were going to do, unless some people had some more hiccups.
You stayed out a little bit longer than some of the other guys in your tyres, but it didn't work out that when you were ninth, you were truly ninth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, as I said, we could have done much more. We extended the first and second and third stint to what we thought we were going to be able to achieve. Thankfully, our tyre wear was low, but when you start 16th, you're always going to get caught up in traffic and lose valuable time.
So much is coming down to strategy now. At which point can you work out in a race where you're going to finish?
I suppose really at the end, but then there's always the question if somebody else is on the soft compound and you're on the hard at the end. There's such a big delta, and even when you're stuck in traffic, it can be up to 2 seconds off, and then you can gain that. So it's so mixed up, you don't really know what's happening. I think it's valuable that the team give you a lot of information for that.
He's a very pragmatic driver, Paul di Resta. When you speak to him and say, how was today? He goes, it's what it is, that's the way it goes.
I love the conversation you had with him on the grid before the start of the race. He's just about to set off on his 5th Grand Prix start. And he's like, OK, I'll take some time to explain how this works and what we do at the start.
It's interesting.
And I actually learned something there about, he used this hill start analogy that I would never have dreamt of. But doesn't that make it so simple to understand that double clutch start
I think
system?
in all those years I was getting it wrong, and I should have just spoken to Paul di Resta. But a quick mention about Paul and the team and the situation he's in at the moment. The car isn't as fast as he would like. Every driver wants a race-winning car. But in terms of a first season in Formula One, to prove that you deserve a faster car and a bigger team, it seems to be going well for Paul.
He couldn't have had a better time, because when you start with a big team, you're under immediate intense pressure. The profile is gigantic. When you start at a team at the back, you more or less know you haven't got a chance because you're not going to get the visibility. Where he started with Force India is absolutely perfect. He has a teammate who is well respected, but he's beating him all the time. And at the moment, little to gossip that are going, if Michael Schumacher didn't continue next year or decided to stop, Paul di Resta looks like being favoured to take that job.
What do you think they've learned at Force India? Because they compromised their qualifying to have a better tyre strategy during the race, and it didn't really work out for them, did it?
No, they obviously made that decision going into quali, and it is a gamble. They're right on the cusp of, can they score a couple of points, an 8th, a 9th, a 10th place, or are they just going to be outside? On today's reflection, then they obviously hasn't worked for them. But would it have been any better had they qualified higher up and had less tyres available? Who knows? But I think just coming back to Paul's performance, as terrible as it is for Force India to hear this, he has almost got to try and get himself into a faster car as soon as possible. The Force India a couple of years ago had pole position with Giancarlo Fisichella and Span. It really looked like they were going places, but they seem to have stalled a little bit right now in that mid-grid. And, you know, they need to find some upgrades to keep a hold of him. Otherwise, for his career, he has to move on. Otherwise, you can get sort of lost in that mid-grid area.
He needs some good PR to tell everybody the car is slower than he's making it go, which is always a good message from a driver. Well, let's talk about Lewis Hamilton then and hear from him, because, of course, it was a great drive from him. He pushed Sebastian Vettel every step of the way, but just a reminder, he is under investigation for the stewards along with 3 other drivers. But when he was out of the car, he spoke to Lee. Here's what he had to say.
Well, Lewis, congratulations. A fantastic race. Just 0.6 of a second off Sebastian. You just couldn't quite get there at the end, could you?
No, we pushed as hard as we could. Really, really happy with the result still. Of course, I would have loved to have won. And a few more laps, I think you may have seen a different result, but just run out of time at the end. It was very difficult to balance how many laps you had left and how much life you had left in the tyres. And, you know, just pushing behind him, you know, he was in clean air and I was in rough air, dirty air, and the car sliding so much, you know, so it was incredibly tough behind him. But nonetheless, we did a great job, and happy to see Jensen came quite far up, because I think he was on the outside of me into turn 1, and we all went quite deep and ended up having him on the curb or something like that, so that wasn't great for him, but I'm glad he was able to come back up, and good results for the team. And yeah, I mean, I really wasn't expecting to be so quick today, but we were quicker than the Red Bulls pretty much, apart from their high-speed pace.
Yeah, people who watch on a Saturday and see that difference in pole position that the Red Bulls seem to have been pulling out would be scratching their heads today, because your race pace was great.
Yeah, I even have no idea what it's all about. When I'm behind him, he's definitely got quite a lot more downforce, particularly in the high speed. The car just doesn't move, but then I'm able to attack and be a little bit more aggressive elsewhere in the circuit. It's particularly the last sector I was quite close to him, but then through the last corner, turn 3 and turn 9, the high-speed corners, he was gone, and so that's an area we need to try and improve. But otherwise, yeah, kept closing that gap, closing it, but just couldn't get close enough.
We're just getting news in that several cars are under investigation for not slowing down under yellows. You're one of the cars. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't know what. I haven't been approached by them yet, but I understand that a few of us are under investigation. I think racing was incredible today, so I heard, and it's a happy event day. You know, I mean, we all abide by the rules, and when we see the yellow flags, we know there's danger around, so we always make sure that we're aware. And but of course, you've got to try and do that without losing too much time. But we'll wait and see, and you know, I think me and Jensen will go up and see what happens.
Regardless, great drive, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so nothing definitive there from Lewis. Just to clarify, it's actually, we mentioned Sebastian Buemi and Jaime Alguersuari. It's actually Sebastian Buemi who's under investigation, not Jaime Alguersuari, who we mentioned earlier on. But the way it works is that they take a look at your lap times, and if you don't show a significant drop in lap time in that area, then they have a word with you. Interesting that Lewis and Vettel, who were on each other's tail at that point and driving lap for lap, you know, second for second, basically, that one of them's up and the other one isn't.
Well, where they have a big advantage, the stewards, it's in sectors. We see very often what the overall lap is. It is split by tradition into 3 different areas, and the area where the crash was, they will be able to see the time. It's possible that Lewis went quicker in that sector than he did before. Now, obviously I heard what he said was quite defensive. They are very seldom brought up in front of the stewards unless there is a real question to answer, and I fear for some of them that I think at least a couple of them will incur a penalty. And it's a shame, because it was a very safe race, as Lewis said, and it was a very exciting race. But the rules are the rules, and that's what needs to happen. Yeah,
the difficulty, as I said earlier, is you only have to be slower in that zone than the previous lap, potentially. But what happens if you've just pitted out? Now, in this case, they hadn't. But, you know, to just explain the difficulty, you might be on a set of options, your previous best might have been on a set of primes. So it's not an exact science, but inevitably, the best thing you can do, and we were always told this, is have a little lift. Because if you show that on the previous lap you'd be 100% throttle and suddenly you're not, then that shows that you've said, okay, I'm going to give up some performance. It is a tricky one, but ultimately the stewards will look at all the information, and Mark Blundell is the driver representative up there. He's very experienced. I don't think that he'll allow them to make any sort of silly decisions.
Okay, from one experienced driver to another. Let's get Jensen's thoughts.
Well, congratulations on the third, but you didn't really make it that easy for yourself. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, you're always the optimist, aren't you? No, it was a tough first lap. I got a bad start, and then turn 1 and turn 3 were just a disaster. I was on the outside on the marbles, and I couldn't get back in. I was hung out to dry, as they say. I think I was about 11th or 12th after lap 1. But then, yeah, it worked out well. You know, we had a reasonably good strategy, and the pit stops were great. The guys did a great job, and we stayed on the option tyres as long as possible. And I don't understand why other people didn't, you know. But there you go. I think if one person at the front does something, I think you have to follow the trend, and we weren't in that group at that point in time. So a great race, and really enjoyed getting past Mark and Fernando in one lap. And I knew I wasn't going to catch the leaders, but you have to keep pushing in case anything happens.
I was going to bring it back round to the good bit, don't worry. So much overtaking today, great from your point of view. At which point did you think we've got to change this strategy? The 3 stops worked this weekend?
I don't want to give anything away. Well, I'm going to right now, but we never planned to do anything else. I didn't want to do any more stops because I thought doing 2 stints on a prime tyre is not good. You know, it's 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds slower than option. Why would you want to do 2 stints on it? So we wanted to spend as much time on the option. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if I didn't have a bad first lap, but you know, you're always going to think like that. But all in all, a good day, a good end, and nice to get a podium.
I'm going to bring it back round again, sorry, but you are under investigation yourself and Lewis for not slowing down under yellows. What do you say to that?
It's the first time I've ever heard in a race that someone's got been called up for not slowing down under yellows in a race. In a race situation, you know, you're putting on new tyres all the time, and new tyres are 2 seconds quicker. You're running down the fuel every lap. You're gaining, you know, half a tenth, whatever tenth, through just you burning fuel. And even if you lift, you know, you lift, you see the incident, you lift, you take avoiding action. You still might go quicker because the rest of the sector you're pushing. You know, if you see an incident and you slow down, you want to push in the rest of the sector to gain the time back. So I don't know. We'll see what they say.
There you go, Jenson describing and explaining just how difficult it is, not just for the drivers, but also for the stewards as well. Jenson made the strategy work today. He had a poor start, but just stopping and not stopping as often as the other guys really worked out for him. Do you think if it hadn't worked at this race and taken the same strategy as he did in Turkey, if it hadn't worked again, would Jenson have said, right, let's end this attempt at trying to make these tyres last and just do what everybody else is doing?
Well, his strategy was good, and the great thing we saw last year, time and time again, Jenson has an ability to read the situation probably better than any other driver currently there. That's partly to do with experience, confidence in his own ability, and he's able to make the car with the tyres work better. That was shown to full advantage today. What was a hiccup, of course, was in previous races he didn't quite get there. Today I thought he was very strong.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the way the season's unfolded so far this year, and someone will probably tell me that this isn't the case with the statistics, but it does look that Lewis has that little edge on outright speed. But what Jenson is able to do is to deliver that speed consistently. So his best chance of delivering the race victory is going to be by doing something different. He is smooth, as you say. That's not to suggest that Lewis is hard on his tyres, but he's certainly, you know, you kind of sense he's got the car by the scruff of the neck when he's setting about his laps. So it's interesting to watch the contrasting styles there within the team.
Okay, if you take a look behind us, actually, up there, Sam, you can see they're working away already with their little machine, taking apart all of these trucks that they have. They have an area across this side, which is to entertain people and to make food. And over this side, it's all about making the cars faster. They will get these taken down and shipped to Monaco very, very quickly indeed, because we're racing there in 7 days' time. So therefore, the stewards have got to make a decision pretty quickly on what's going on today. We all need to know where we're at, and Ted is sniffing out news. Ted, what can you tell us at the moment?
Hello, Jake. Yes, well, let's deal with the facts first, shall we? So Heikki Kovalainen made a mistake. He's admitted to that in the Team Lotus motorhome just down there. I've gone to check, and he went off the track on lap 48. Now, on that lap, the 4 cars in question, who are, as you've been saying, Mark Webber, Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, and car 19. Let's just clear that up. It is Jaime Alguersuari. You were right the first time. They are under investigation because they set their fastest laps of the race thus far on that lap. Now, what we're hearing from Red Bull and certainly McLaren, who I've spoken to inside that motorhome, is that they do believe the telemetry will show that Jenson and Lewis did lift and they were aware of the yellow flags, and they did what they were told. And it's just as Jensen was saying, because they were on fresh tyres, the fuel was coming down, they were setting very quick sectors, and their lap times, yes, they were the fastest of the race so far, but they were lifting and they were aware of the situation. So they're pretty confident that they will show, when it goes to the stewards, that the drivers had the best intentions of doing the right thing, even though the raw data in terms of the lap times might not have shown that.
Excellent. Ted, thank you very much. Actually, that makes it sound pretty cut and dry, doesn't it?
Yes. Does it?
No, you weren't listening.
Not to me, it doesn't.
I was, but you know what it makes it sound is that Ted's given us a very good explanation of you know, the lap times and the interpretation from the teams. The only thing that matters is what the stewards think, because we can present everything we like right here, but it wouldn't be the first time that the stewards have come out with a different decision than maybe what the rest of the paddock felt was the appropriate one. But let's wait and see.
I've no doubt that the team will take that argument to the stewards, Eddie. Just explain the process from the stewards announcing an investigation until the decision's made.
Well, the team, of course, will right at this moment in time, they're frantically going through the regulations and the rules. They'll be looking at the telemetry, they'll be downloading all the data, and they will try and see. I think the important thing here for every one of those teams is they will have to show that on the trace of the throttle that there is a lift. And if it's not there and they are quicker, I don't think they have a hope in hell. Not a chance. They will be penalised as a result.
Well, what complicates it, we never really got a good camera angle to show where Heikki Kovalainen had gone off, but it looked quite late in turn 4. So let's presume the next marshal's post before that was literally as you break into the turn. So you were going to be lifting anyway. So then the issue comes, it's not about whether you've lifted the throttle, the issue will be your minimum speed. Can you show that you actually had been aware of the yellow flags and you had taken action that would... if you know, something happened to your car or another incident or whatever, you could have, you know, got your car under control without endangering the marshals. And you know, we're only talking about 1 kilometre/hour difference would be enough to actually persuade them. So we're talking very small margins.
One interesting point there when we were watching the race, just at the impact of the race, who was just passing by? Vettel. So he was not part of the thing, so that's why he's not up in front of the stewards. I think in this particular occasion, he was very fortunate because he missed all that action. The next car up got the yellow flag, and I'd say that's the problems there.
OK, well, Claire L. Richards and plenty of other people on Twitter actually getting in touch saying, if the stewards do decide that the drivers are at fault, what will the penalty be? She then says, so worried for the McLarens.
Well, there's a whole host of penalties depending on how severe they think it is. If the drivers can't show, the team can't show some form of lift or reduction in speed, in theory, they can remove them completely from the results. What I would expect they would do is add a time penalty to the race results, and of course that would move them down. How much of a penalty? Again, that's down to getting open the book and then deciding, right, we think it was mild, so we'll give them 10 seconds, or we think it was severe, we'll give them more.
OK, I'm just hearing that if all three get penalised 30 seconds, then obviously it won't change the places. If, however, the stewards made a decision and it did change the places, considering where Lewis and Jensen finished up, it could be a very big decision in terms of the title battle, actually.
My guess is that there will be some form of penalty. My also guess is it'll be a message to say, hey guys, just be aware more in the future. This is why the rules are there. But I don't believe it will change the order of the finishing order in terms of the points giveaway.
As we saw in Malaysia, in that situation, Lewis obviously did lose out and Fernando didn't. So
it was a matter of 1 point, which at where he finished probably wasn't, in the scheme of things, all that dramatic. But nevertheless, I think if there's a proof that they did not lift on the trace, there will be a penalty.
OK, I just want to bring this up because I'm getting loads of questions in about Felipe Massa. He had an unlucky race today, but lots of people saying with the announcement of a long-term contract for Fernando Alonso, where does this leave Felipe Massa? Is this the beginning of the end of his Ferrari career?
Well, he's been there for several years. He's been a loyal servant. He's had a lot of victories there. And it did look like he was just starting to turn the corner with his performance in Turkey and before that. But overall, he hasn't been delivering the race results that Fernando Alonso has. Should we really be surprised by that? You know, Fernando Alonso is a double world champion. Felipe Massa has proven himself to be very quick in the past. You know, you can't have both your cars crossing the line at the same time, so you either obviously want to have two number ones and let them fight it out, or you want to have a great number one and, you know, a great number two who's going to be the guy who's bringing home the points. And in a situation like today, you know, I think I said in commentary, ouch, when he was being lapped. I don't know what other issue he had up until that point, either sort of half spin, which didn't seem to appear to cost him that much time. And then, you know, it was a bit of a messy race for him at the end. So today didn't look good, but let's just remember in Turkey it didn't look great for Michael.
Yeah.
And then this
Great turnaround,
2 weeks later, he looks a lot better.
That's the great point. You obviously read my mind. The problem, and it was a major problem for Michael in Turkey. If you now take away Schumacher, insert Massa for here, it's the same. It was a poor race. You know, it's no bad thing. Drivers do have bad races. It's how they bounce back. And it'll be a measure of the character of Massa. We need to see how he's going to go. Monaco is going to be a huge test for a lot of drivers, but particularly for him.
And do you think perhaps the fact that Fernando signed a long-term contract, it rules out Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel from going to that team anytime in the near future?
Absolutely, but I might also add, it sort of causes consternation. I do not believe that the announcement of Alonso will have helped Massa today. Psychologically, even though he's been told he's got a contract for next year, we also know what happens in these situations, and that will have hurt him, in my view, mentally, and it will see him absolutely for sure that he is number 2. If he was ever in any doubt about that prior to this, he clearly is number 2 and has been treated as such.
How much does it bother you what your teammate's up to and how long his contract might be, or what clauses there are, or how much he's earning each year?
You go through phases of confidence. When you're delivering, then you're supremely confident, and you know, why wouldn't the team want to keep you in? When you're not going so well, you're almost dreading the conversation because it's almost inevitable. You know, Grand Prix teams, drivers are like light bulbs, and even if they've been there, even if they have a great relationship, you know, whoever would have imagined that Michael Schumacher, after achieving so much at Ferrari, would then pop up again racing in Formula 1 with Mercedes.
Yeah.
You know, the drivers can do the same thing as the teams. You know, they use the light bulb for a few years. Once it starts to dim, they bring out the new fresh one, and that's always been a part of sport. Same in football and so many other sports.
You'd do it, wouldn't you? You're running a team.
I love that analogy, light bulb. I've been telling you for years that you guys are indispensable. We don't actually need you. We could put robots in there and they would cost an awful lot less money.
There you go. He's still bitter about having to pay drivers money. That's
No,
the problem.
I'm not.
But if you were running a team, you're running Ferrari, Fernando comes to you and says, look, I want to sign up till 2016. I see this as my home. The team love me. The Tifosi love me. I love being here.
I'd not
Surely you'd
chance
announce
would I
it.
do.
Yeah, but if
No.
you did, you'd announce it. It doesn't matter what it means to Felipe.
Felipe doesn't come into this. Actually, being cruel about it, Felipe is not the future of Ferrari's Formula 1 program. That's absolutely for sure. But signing somebody to 2016, complacency, haphazard, all sorts of innuendo, I don't like it. It's too long. We spoke to Christian Horner earlier. He was amazed. He was amazed. He said, I don't understand how anyone could sign a driver until 2016, unless they know something that we don't know. And I cannot believe at this moment, in the way that Ferrari is performing, and they need a top designer in there to get them back really on track. Now, maybe they found him, maybe they've signed him, and that can be the only reason why Fernando would want to do it. Otherwise, I would put to question, where is the motivation for Fernando? Can he really win world championships there? And at this moment, that can be unanswered. I can't answer that, and I don't think he can.
Well, maybe he's comfortable in the fact that he's won 2 championships. We've said before he was able to achieve those at Renault when Michael was at the peak of his powers within Ferrari. So he may just be so confident that, you know, he knows that he's able to deliver if they can deliver the car. He's aware of the fact that he's a bit old and a bit wiser, that life is full of ups and downs. And although Ferrari don't have the quickest car right now, maybe he's just hopeful that, you know, at some point in the future they will. You know, they were able to achieve many world championships without having Adrian Newey there, who's obviously been the other designer that's been leading the charge of Grand Prix victories and championships with Williams, McLaren, and now with Red Bull. So he may well just be, I'm enjoying my racing, I've got nothing else to prove, I want to put my long-term future with Ferrari.
OK, well, let's hear then from the man who Eddie doesn't think does have a long-term future with Ferrari, Felipe Massa.
Felipe, a difficult day and a disappointing end for you. Just tell us what happened.
Well, actually, the biggest problem on the race was when we fit the hard tires. You know, it was very difficult to drive the car on the hard tires. Basically, no grip, and I think we lost a lot compared to the other teams. You know, and then I had a problem on the gearbox, so I lost the gears. I tried again, and then I lost the gears, so it was not possible to carry on.
You'll be looking for a bit more success when you head to Monaco. In terms of the speed of the Ferrari, is there anything that can be done between now and Monaco to give you guys a smile?
Well, for sure, it's not a long time, but you know, not even 1 week in front. We have different tires, so maybe it can be already a good direction, you know, to use soft and super soft there.
So we're definitely looking forward to be, to be in a good shape in Monaco compared to here.
Okay, in just a few days' time, Felipe will be hoping that he can impress in Monaco. Well, let's now join Martin Brundle. Martin's in his analysis truck. Plenty to look at from this race, Martin. We were just talking to David at the start of the forum about the fact that it was probably as exciting as Turkey, but not quite as frenetic, I don't think.
Well, I don't know, my head was spinning at the end of it. I'm going to come out and join you in a little while and we can continue to talk about it. But I've been in here analysing how Vettel managed to really hang on to this Grand Prix victory despite having no KERS for much of the race. And of course, with Lewis right behind him, having access to that DRS rear wing adjustment and the extra speed the McLaren had anyway, just from pure setup in qualifying. How did Vettel manage to keep Lewis Hamilton behind him through the Grand Prix? And it starts really with Lewis's pit stops. There was one in particular that was a little bit messy, cost him 4.4 seconds for the overall stop. If we can just play that one through. There it is. And apparently the left rear was just a little bit sticky, the wheel not going on, so we're talking fractions of a second. Remember, Vettel won the race by less than a second. And compare that to Sebastian Vettel's stop around the same time. They got 3.9 there. There was another one at 4.4 for Lewis later on as well. And we see Red Bull dispatching their man in what turns out to be 3.6 seconds. And of course, all of these tenths of a second count. You can drive the wheels of the thing on the racetrack, but that particular one was 3.7. There was another one at 3.6. So these are all critical moments in the Grand Prix. But what really, I think, made the difference is on the outlap, Vettel just nailed with those fresh tyres. Remember, he's just simply going down into turn 5. He's done Jenson Button. They almost touch. And he's come out of the pits seeing all of this traffic, and he's thought, right, I've just got to get through this somehow. So 3 corners later, he's also gone past the struggling Felipe Massa, who was having difficulty braking, it seems, all afternoon, and eventually dropped out with a gearbox problem. And clearing that little bit of traffic made all the difference in terms of he had track position. He was ahead of Lewis Hamilton. So then how did he defend towards the end of the Grand Prix? And I think Vettel was very smart indeed, heading down to turn 1. We've got a bit of footage. Of course, he's coming out of the last corner, down the long pit straight. Hamilton can get the rear wing open, get in the slipstream, get his KERS working. Look at the closing speed there. And Vettel was choosing this time just to park the car in the middle of the track. Didn't get leery, didn't start diving around the racetrack, costing himself the turn-in point to the corner. And it's so hard to judge in your mirrors when a car's closing on you. When is the point you start to defend and when you don't? Don't defend fresh air is the golden rule. And here we see it again. Vettel was so quick off that last chicane. It took the whole straight for Lewis to get there. Vettel's parked in the middle, not panicking. And Lewis starts to look one side and then the other. Vettel just coasts back to take his turn-in point. And I think that calm head, not blocking your wheels, not feeling the need to go too defensive on the way into turn 1, left Lewis absolutely no options whatsoever. We've got a couple more examples as we head down to that turn 1. But that, for me, was the story of how Sebastian Vettel somehow rescued the Grand Prix and stopped a spectacular victory from Lewis Hamilton. Here we see it again. And Vettel realised that by a few metres, and it looked so similar, didn't it? Just by a few metres, he knew he didn't have to defend on that lap. And so great driving from both of them. One thing I want to look at now is Fernando Alonso's start. Talking about great driving, he hooks up the perfect getaway. Just listen to this. Just let the revs drop down, connect the rear tyres up and go. He's in the slipstream of the Red Bulls. He's following around trying to get the pair of them, but he doesn't lift off the throttle. A little waggle of the steering wheel, and he's passed a pair of them, and he stayed on the throttle. There was the width of a Ferrari plus a few centimetres, and he didn't even think about lifting off. Can we play that one again, DBM? Because I'd really like to see that. That was supreme skill and bravery, and you're living on your instincts down to the first corner. He knows he's got a good start instantly, and he's thinking, right, what am I going to do now? Look at that for a reaction. And then the skies open up, it's clear in front of him, and he's into the first corner. The crowd 80-odd thousand people here today must have erupted when they saw that live or on the big screen, the diamond screens around the circuit. So I'm just enjoying the supreme skills of these drivers today.
Lovely job. Thanks a lot, Martin. An incredible start from Fernando Alonso there. But just going back to the points that Martin was making previously about Lewis desperately trying to catch Sebastian Vettel. In Turkey, everybody said, oh, DRS is too much. This makes passing too easy. We all came here seeing the longest DRS zone so far in Formula One this year, and being told that from Canada we can have 2 DRS zones because now the software is able to cope with giving us 2 zones during a Grand Prix. And we thought, well, are the FAA not listening to us? DRS is too much. That's what everybody's thinking. Yet, for some reason here, it just didn't have the effect that we expected. Can you explain how the track layout made a difference to the DRS?
Well, I think the main reason is turn 16, which you come out of 14, 15, the chicane, and in 16 is on the limit of the car. Surprisingly, they're pulling 3.5 G through there, which is not that much less than what we're pulling through turn 3 or turn 9. So there is a lot of load on the car, and that means that if you're running in dirty air, you're just losing efficiency. And then by the point at which they get the car straightened up, 100 meters or so later, that's the DRS activation point. So the damage has already been done, and all you're doing with DRS is then winning back what's already been lost. Now, when you can contrast that to Istanbul, coming through turn 9 and 10, the cars are able to, because it's a slower corner in turn 9, run a lot closer, and therefore when they get into the activation point, they're in the zone where once they open out that wing and gain the 12k or whatever speed they gain from their system, they get right into the slipstream and then pull the pass before braking.
OK, we'll carry on this conversation in just a moment, but first we've got breaking news. The news is that the McLaren drivers have been reprimanded. Ted is with Martin Whitmarsh.
Well, Martin, I'm sure you're relieved that both McLaren drivers didn't receive any penalty. What were you able to show the stewards?
We were able to show that they were slower at that corner than we had been. Sorry, I'll just do this. Okay, and so the data showed that they had been, but I think the stewards still felt reprimand was appropriate, and but I think they took a sensible view. And anyway, it's. We move on now. We've got to make sure that we stay out of trouble. We do a good job, and we'll see now. But it's only a few days before we get to Monaco.
So did Lewis and Jenson lift?
No, it was in a part of the circuit where they weren't on throttle anyway. So that was the difficulty. Ordinarily, you're having the debate and you can show a lift, but when they're off throttle, you can't show a lift, can you? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Very interesting. So there you go, a reprimand for the drivers. The likelihood, we believe, is that all 4 will get a reprimand. Eddie?
What I don't understand is how can you get a reprimand if you did nothing wrong? I mean...
So you're either saying they did speed under yellow flag conditions or they did nothing wrong at all?
I don't get what Martin is trying to say. Or, his explanation of what the steward said to him was he was able to demonstrate that you lifted. They were actually slower. Well, then they're excused. Bye-bye, lads. I'm sorry. Yes, well done. You've shown us exactly. If it's a reprimand for a reason. You don't get reprimand for doing nothing wrong. That's my understanding.
Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes you get a yellow card when you didn't actually clip the heels of the guy in front. It's all down to what the referee decides at that moment. Maybe the 3 stewards that were here wanted to actually give him a penalty, and maybe Mark Blundell was able to persuade them, look, that's just too much. So to find a sort of compromise,
can you say
to
you
satisfy
reacted,
their lust to give out some sort of penalties, then they've gone for the reprimand.
Can you say you reacted but you didn't react enough? We need to see more in this kind of situation from a driver.
Whenever we discuss this in drivers' briefings, Charlie will always say, you've got to show that you have reacted to the yellow flags and you were prepared to stop if necessary, because that yellow flag could very quickly turn into a red flag. And of course, even if you're going through, with a slightly lower speed in the corner, the speed of that corner might be an apex speed of 100 miles an hour. Well, if you have a right rear suspension failure at 100 miles an hour, you're going back into the area where the car's sitting there on the gravel surrounded by marshals. So, these marshals, we have to remember, they are not paid for this job. They do it for the love of the sport, very hard working, and we have to protect those guys. You can't put them out in danger without out believing that the professionals on track are not respecting the flags. It's part of the rules.
But if you're not giving it full throttle, how can you lift if you're not accelerating? Do you put your arm in the air and wave so everybody knows that you've seen the flag?
It's not about full throttle, not full throttle. You have to show that you have slowed down relative to whatever lap, whether that's the fastest lap or the previous lap. At the end of the day, the stewards can interpret it.
So they just want to know that you did enough to make it safer than at full racing speed.
Yeah, because what we've seen in the past is, and Martin mentioned it in commentary, drivers who lift a hand but keep their foot completely flat.
It's a good trick.
So saying, OK, I'm doing it one-handed, I see the yellow flags, but they've moved on since then. So now you have to show you're slowing down.
Yeah, you raised your hand on a few occasions during your career, but it wasn't for waving at people. Let's hear from Nico Rosberg, finished behind Michael Schumacher today for a change.
Well, Nico, just tell us about your race. You seem to spend a lot of it battling with your teammate.
Yeah, there were some cool battles. Unfortunately, it was a difficult race for me. For one, the first lap wasn't great. And then after that, I struggled because the radio didn't work. So that made it a little bit difficult to understand everything. And because there's so much, you have to do with the settings and fuel saving and this and that. So that was a bit challenging. And then my rear wing also broke, so I didn't have the overtaking system. And then it just made it very difficult to overtake. Otherwise, for sure, I could have moved up, and I'm sure I would have finished a lot closer to the top because I think I had pretty good pace today.
Michael was saying that he didn't really have the balance in his car. What was it like for you? Is the car still progressing as you wanted to?
Didn't look like he had a good balance, I must say, in front of me. I was pretty happy with my car. Felt good. So, that's why we mustn't be too disappointed, I think, with the result. Because as I say, I think I had good speed, and I would have been much closer to the top. So, but still a lot of work to do. Because unfortunately, I don't think we really managed to close the gap yet. So we're still struggling a little bit. But I'm sure we'll improve, and the next couple of races should be good for us.
Well, frustration there for Nico Rosberg, wishing the team would let him nick past Michael Schumacher. There's a huge scrum that you can't see just in front of me. Behind me, there's nobody, but alongside me is Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian is always very busy after a Grand Prix. Sorry to disturb your conversation you were having there. Let's get your reaction from today's race. You smell of champagne once again, but that seems to be the norm for you this season.
Not the normal, obviously. Today was very... Doesn't work?
I think it maybe is. Try it now.
1, 2.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's not the normal, obviously, it's always a long way, and yeah, today... Well done. Thank you. Today was a long way. Obviously, we had to be very aggressive in the beginning to get ahead of Fernando, who I don't know where he came from at the start, to jump him, and then we got all our good tires out of the way, so we had a long time to fill with the hard tires. And Lewis, he was pushing very hard from behind. Arguably, they were a bit quicker than us. So, I always had to find enough time in the places I could, in the high-speed corners, to make sure that I had enough of a gap going on the straights. Obviously, he was always close enough to then stall the wing and didn't, make our life easy. But then when you see the checkered flag and you see it in the mirror, the car is still behind, and it's a big relief and feels great.
I saw your father after the race, and he was holding his heart, obviously the nerves of the last few laps. Can you just explain the emotion that you have? And is that the most stressful moment for a race driver, being hunted down with a few laps to go, especially when you know he was able to pass you in China in a similar situation?
Yeah, China was a bit different though, because obviously he had a set that had much fewer laps on it. So, in China it was pretty much clear that there's no real point holding him up, because then I will, probably not finish second, finish even worse. But, to be honest, 10 laps to go and you see him closing in, it's not nice. And, I knew that they had a bit of an advantage at the straights. Then he's always close enough to use his rear wing, which doesn't help. Plus, imagine you get the radio call to not use KERS, to not use the boost, which here largely rely onto the main straight. So was not what I was hoping for. But then at some stages I thought, it will be difficult to defend. Other stages towards the end I thought, okay, I will do it. So you never really know what to expect, because in the end, you're driving a bit into the unknown with these tires. You really always hope in that situation, I have to push because I want to stay ahead. But you don't really know if you reach that cliff and the tires really go off. I was hoping, for his tires to start to see the bigger degradation, because he's following dirty air and so on. But at the end, I think both of us were sliding like crazy and just finding our way on the limit of the tires. So, as I said, it was extremely tough, but very enjoyable and good fun.
Was this your best victory of the season so far?
Well, it was a different one. Let's say, obviously comparing that to Turkey, Turkey was pretty much in control, and your heart rate, I think, is quite a bit less at the end of the race than it was today. But, as I said, you enjoy those moments when you see the checkered flag. Just everything is, going off, and is great. So it was a very, very good day today.
Sebastian, I'm confused. I'm confused because I don't understand where the dominance in qualifying has evaporated to in the race. Can you tell us?
I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know.
you must know.
Yeah, we have some ideas, but obviously yesterday I was warning people because they were saying, "Oh, okay, today will be a boring race and it will only be between the Red Bulls for the victory." I think turn one, all these people, got very small and silent and disappeared. So it was very close today. And as I said, arguably, 30 laps to go. Halfway through the race, the McLaren starts to pick up pace, which we couldn't really answer, and we stayed ahead. We always, the target was always with pit stops to be aggressive, to maintain track position, because we knew that once we get behind, it will be very difficult. We've seen it in the first stint. Even though we could have gone quicker than Fernando, I think quite a bit. I couldn't get past him. They were too quick on the straights, and we can't go over them in the corners. So, but to answer your question, I don't know.
I bet you wish you had the answer to that. You had the answer on the track today, particularly after your first pit stop. We all feared for you because you came out into quite a bit of traffic there. Were you surprised to come out and suddenly have a gearbox right in front of you?
Yeah, I saw, obviously at pit exit, many cars ahead, and then cars side by side, and there was no chance to stay ahead of Jensen. And obviously, I know at that stage we are aggressive, so we come in onto a fresh set, and I have to use it right away. If you're in traffic, it doesn't really line up with gaining lap time. So I knew I had to get past immediately. I got past Jensen just into turn 5, and the same thing with Felipe. That was important. But arguably, if I would have been in free air, we would have jumped Fernando already then. Like that, we did not. And then the second stop, we tried again to be aggressive and made it stick. So obviously. I looked at there's a big tower at the main straight, and I see 48 laps to go, and I've done already 2 stops. I can work that one out myself. I know that it means a lot of laps in the end of the race on the same set of tires.
Okay, well, you've got a debrief to go to, so we'll let you do just that. Sadly, there's no time to celebrate because we'll be in Monaco in 7 days' time. But maybe you could celebrate there with another win.
I hope so.
I bet.
In a week's time, same point. But a lot of work. And surely for the guys, on the one hand we'll want to enjoy, but on the other hand we have to get ready for Monaco, pack up and get all the stuff there. So today was great, but we move forwards quickly because Thursday we are running in Monaco. So.
Okay, well, great drive, great crazy frog impression.
Yeah.
See you in Monaco.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Sebastian, and we'll take the mic away from you and let you go and do what you need to do. Or, of course, we could leave the microphone with Sebastian and hear what has to be said in the debrief as well. Great to catch up and have a chat with him as ever. And actually, we spoke there about the overtakes after that first pit stop. Crucial to his race and the success of his race, David.
Well, he made them work for him very well. What I think is so remarkable for a young man that's in such a rush in qualifying and in the race, he gives such long and detailed answers. You feel as if surely you must have to get somewhere else. But if you'd ask him another question, he'd still be there explaining. It's so the contrast between how he is off track and how he is in the car is quite remarkable.
What's even more remarkable, he almost asked us to go and do that interview. He was there and he enjoys the British coming up towards the British Grand Prix. Hopefully he'll do his little rock star impersonation on the thing after the Grand Prix. But he does like exactly because he knows and he sees what's going on worldwide, and this particular show he's very eager and very wishing to be part of it.
Sure, well, it was a great drive from Seb. He's the picture of serenity out the front at the moment, but in Formula One it's never particularly serene. As you would expect, as we have every season, there's a little bit of a storm brewing at the moment, and the storm is brewing because of the way that the cars are using their exhaust pipes and their diffusers at the moment. What they're doing now, they're blowing exhaust gases through their diffuser, but cleverly, they're also doing that when they're not on the throttle, which means the cars have got better downforce, they stick to the track better, they can go faster, but only if you've got them. Well, a couple of teams here haven't. Virgin, as you saw in Turkey, were trying to bring them onto the car, but they got too hot, and sadly they cracked. We saw what happened over this weekend, actually, when one of the Renault cars set on fire because of the way that their exhaust pipe works. Well, the teams that haven't got them think that they are illegal, and Colin Collars, who runs the Hispania team, is ready to protest if it carries on.
Well, Colin, now the race is over. I'm sure you've had a lot of people asking you about the exhaust-blown diffusers. Hispania are one of the teams who aren't using this what's so-called hot exhaust blowing. A lot of other people are. Are you considering any action after what Charlie Whiting said about it?
The only reason why we are not considering is because we were not really involved in any sporting decision today. but it is clear that the other cars are illegal. We agree absolutely with Charlie Whiting's view, and by the way, we are not the only ones who agree. And I think that if this is not going to be stopped before Monaco, then we have no other choice.
No other choice apart from what?
To make a protest.
And when would you do that? After the Monaco Grand Prix?
Well, I cannot tell you at what stage during the Monaco Grand Prix.
I mean, protests are normally done after the race, aren't you? You protest the result.
Qualifying. This I cannot answer at the moment. The point is that it has been very clearly stated that it is not corresponding to the regulations. We have studied this very carefully. You cannot influence the aerodynamics, as you call it, with hot exhaust gases. You cannot influence aerodynamic by any movements like gas pedals or moving devices on the engine or whatever. So this is illegal, and it brings the other teams a huge advantage.
Well, Martin has joined us to discuss just this. Breaking news from today that the 4 drivers who were involved in the not slowing down under yellow flags saga have only been reprimanded, so there's no change of result from this Grand Prix. But the news going forwards, and we'll speak to Martin now that he's come down and joined us on this first of all, is that Colin Collis clearly isn't happy. I guess he's most unhappy that he hasn't been able to incorporate these kind of exhaust pipes on his car, because that tends to be the way it goes in Formula One. You try and have the same advantage as everybody else, and if you can't get it, then you look for a way of outlawing it. Do you think that blowing these gases when you're off the throttle should be outlawed in Formula One? Is it wrong, or is it just clever Formula One design, which is what should be encouraged?
Well, it's what Formula One's all about, isn't it? Ingenious design, and they've been using the throttles in engines unusually for some years now. I remember on your McLaren, and that must be 5-6 years ago now, of using the throttle opening, going into corners to help this car slow down and to put the power on. And so there's all sorts of cunning systems on the cars. I don't understand why it's all of a sudden become illegal or not desirable. I spoke to Charlie Whiting just before the start of the race, and he said what they've seen from the software, remember that FIA has access to all of the software of all of the cars, and they said it's just become extreme, that they're now igniting fuel. They've got gas going through the engine with no torque, no energy coming through, so that's why the cars don't push into the slow corners. And he thinks it's just going too far. And as with so many of these technological advances, they don't stop them soon enough. That's why they had to get rid of the double diffuser. That's why they had to get rid of the F-duct. They know that if they didn't, there'd be 6 different F-ducts on the cars this year, for example.
Eddie?
Yeah, I think, what we need to be very sure about is that Colin is doing a difficult job at the back of the grid. It can't be seen as if it's just sour grapes. I can't do it, so you shouldn't have it. And I'm not sure that's the case. What I think the case of Colin Collis is making it very clear, and that is, these are the rules. I'm playing by the rules. Why shouldn't they? And he just wants clarification, I would imagine, and it needs Charlie to come out and be very clear. But if I was a team going to Monaco, would I change the whole setup of my car? I'd first go to see Charlie and ask him I want a ruling and I want interpretation.
Well, first of all, they don't have to change the car going to Monaco, sorry, because Charlie, although he had introduced a rule prior to this weekend saying that it was outlawed, he's then pulled that back and said it will be discussed at the next technical working group, which I believe is the middle of June.
Yep.
So that's the point, that if it's going to be outlawed for this year, it'll be removed. This has been on the cars, all the top teams, since the middle of last year and maybe even before that. So it's not something new. It's just that the smaller teams are struggling to actually build a car, never mind develop these systems. And, I think the rules for me are quite clear in that movable aerodynamic devices are outlawed. But technically, is this a movable aerodynamic device? You're certainly affecting the aerodynamics of the car. It'll be discussed and decided. But I actually think that when Martin was explaining there about, they're putting fuel down through the engine, they're igniting that fuel, but they're retarding the engine so you're not generating torque, which is how you don't push the car on in the entry. Well, that's going to use more fuel. So strategically, the teams that have it will have to run more fuel in the race because they're burning more, or certainly pumping more fuel. Once it's gone down through the pistons, it isn't coming back into your fuel tank. So you could argue, well, is that any different from having a turbocharger and having, not using a boost over, an overbooster? Is that, in your days, you had no turbo racing against turbo cars?
But you could also argue, well, look, the driver's foot is not in any way connected to the engine, as is the case on a lot of very modern road cars, actually. It's electronically, you're pushing a potentiometer, and the throttle pedal is now described as a torque request from the driver, an amount of power the driver would like from the engine. There's no direct correlation. So you can say, well, sorry, but that's a movable aerodynamic device. Then where do you draw the line? And I think what Charlie's saying is the line for him is drawn by the fact that they're igniting these gases, and the driver's got his foot clean off the throttle, but the engine's busy doing something all by itself, and he's not accepting that. But it's not the work of a moment to rewrite all the code, and that's why I think they've... Charlie said to me he reckons by the British Grand Prix in July at Silverstone that it will be outlawed.
OK, we'll wait and see how this one pans out, but certainly Colin Collis is not a happy man about it at the moment. However, a very happy man. We just spoke to him live here on the F1 Forum. Sebastian Vettel, he won the race, but he didn't win the driver of the day. He came third in the poll on the BBC Sport website. He picked up 14%, just over 14%, but he still finishes on the podium. However, the podium isn't good enough for him at the moment, is it? It's all about the wins. Second, Jenson Button. Well done to Jenson, just ahead of Sebastian, 16.1% for him. And I think that we can guess who the driver of the day is. In first place, you guessed it, Lewis Hamilton, with a corking 38.3%. So thank you very much for heading onto the website. I know plenty of you now watch the F1 Forum on there. You even watch the race online. Modern technology, hey, who'd have thought it? Driver of the day, hands up anyone who doesn't agree with Lewis Hamilton.
Well, we've had this discussion earlier on, didn't we?
I sort of pegged him equally with Sebastian Vettel, because I think that Sebastian had, as he confirmed there, a lot of pressure to handle this time. He knew what happened last time he had Lewis Hamilton 1 second behind him in China. Lewis ended up passing him. I think it was a fantastic drive from both of those guys. They are, at the moment, just a little bit better than all the rest out there. You know, Fernando Alonso can't exploit his full potential because the car's not there, but certainly Lewis Hamilton is delivering some great results, and I think that was a great race from him.
A commendation to Schumacher, Eddie?
I thought there were some outstanding drives other than the three that we've just seen, and I thought Schumacher for sure, Heidfeld, absolutely. I loved what Perez did. Two Saubers in the top 10 scoring points. Wonderful, great effort by both of them, but I would probably just shade it out, compete against the guys. I thought Jenson, for where he was and what he fought for and getting back from 5th, 6th, whatever it was, back to the podium, I thought it was a really good drive in a very difficult set of circumstances. He had the best strategy beyond anyone, and I'd go with Jenson.
OK, well done. Thank you all very much. And now we head to Monaco. Fond memories of Monaco. What was your first trip like there when you were racing?
Oh, you don't want to know. I remember having a shower on the beach because it was about all we had. We kind of, in those Formula 3 days, we all... you know, we lived like gypsies. I don't think much has changed, actually. But nevertheless, they were great fun days. I just love what used to go on in those. It was absolutely seat-of-the-pants racing. You just never... And they were hardcore people. They were great days. I love them.
Talking of seat-of-the-pants, that was Christian Horner trying to pull down David Coulthard's trousers. He's obviously already in the Monaco spirit.
Well, do you blame him?
No, I don't blame him. Another win.
He's on a crest of a wave right now as a team principal.
Yeah, maybe he's been at the fizzy stuff. Looking forward to it, Martin. It's always nice when we have these back-to-back races just a few days apart, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're driving up tonight to Monaco, a few hours on the road, and we'll be making some footage again on Wednesday, ready for the show. And here's Billy Blundell. He is the driver steward of the weekend. Marky boy, the precedent set for drivers not lifting for the safety of the marshals. They've been reprimanded, not penalised. Sorry to hit you like cold with that one, but... I'm just a bit concerned by the precedent, but I haven't seen the data, and you have.
I'm only an FIA driver steward, one of 4 of us up in the room, so it's quite difficult for me to actually make an official comment.
Right, you're not allowed to say, because I wonder if it's a bit of a dangerous precedent to sort of acknowledge that they didn't lift for the yellows and protect the marshals, and but they've been reprimanded.
You've seen the official notification, what's come out of the meeting?
I haven't, because I've been running around.
Okay.
Exactly. We were told, for example, that they've been reprimanded, yet Martin Whitmarsh told us that they did lift. I can't work out, if you lifted, you're innocent, and if you didn't lift, then you needed reprimand. They don't work out. Maybe you could help us. Why would you reprimand somebody if they didn't lift, if they did lift?
Because their personal sector times are still improved.
There is the answer. I think it's difficult for Mark to talk about this on the air.
It is very difficult, but how did you enjoy being the driver steward?
Not a lot of misunderstandings.
That
was great fun.
Till you got here, yeah?
Yeah.
That's a much nicer question to ask, Martin. Mark, thanks for joining us. Sorry about the sledgehammer
That's
ride
right.
at
The
the
weekend
start
was
there.
great until I turned up here.
I thought, all right, well, listen, it's lovely to see you, and he's off again, just so he doesn't have to get collared with any more difficult questions. You're now in trouble with your friend.
He's one of my best mates, so
Not anymore,
it's
Martin.
Fine, but
He was one of your
it's
best
fine, but it's difficult. Mark, as Mark says, he's one of 4 stewards, but I think it's a dangerous precedent to set.
Yep, OK, well, we've all discussed Monaco already, so let's head there. We'll see you there in just a few days' time. Wednesday is when it all gets going. Everything happens a day earlier in Monaco because Friday is a public holiday, so we look forward to seeing you for the race there next Sunday. It should be pretty special. See you in a few days' time. Bye-bye. He's getting his photograph.
So you've got to pick your battle.
Red Bull's strategy upside down already.
You've got to choose which ones to fight. Oh, 'cause it doesn't really matter
who can win this battle of wills.
Oh, who's wrong or right? Oh, yes, you've got to pick your battles.
It's Hamilton taking the fight to Vettel.
To make it work out in the end.
Ring, ding, 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 ding.
Next time on Formula One, Round 6, Monaco.